Anyways, I've been getting a lot of questions about Bitcoin. Bitcoin recently passed the $1 trillion valuation. And so I'd like to talk about this topic. As you listen to the show, realize that this is just Jason thinking out loud. This topic of Bitcoin is relatively new. I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of reading. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on the topic. Know that this is me thinking out loud. This is just me trying to wrap my mind around exactly what's going on here with Bitcoin. And I thought I'd share with you what I've been learning. But the other thing is, some of the questions that I have about Bitcoin, one of the things I know is that we have this amazing community of listeners. And so I'm really curious to know how you might be able to help me better understand Bitcoin. But then also I'm curious to know if you're going to have some questions that maybe things that I didn't think about that you'd like to ask. And so what I'm going to do is in the comments section on Sound Retirement Planning for this episode, I'm going to leave the comments section open so that people can share their comments. You know, tell me what you think I got right, what you think I got wrong, and help me understand this, because it is kind of mind-boggling to me. A good friend of mine, guy I like to go hiking with, bought Bitcoin at $5,500. That's how much one Bitcoin was when he bought it. Today, Bitcoin is over $50,000. So when we go out on hikes, he likes to remind me about how much money he's making on Bitcoin. And I explained to him, I say, look, I just don't understand this Bitcoin thing, so I haven't invested any of my own money in it. And then he tells me, he says, well, you're trying to understand it. I'm making a bunch of money. And in this case, he's right. My need to create a logical narrative means that I've missed out on Bitcoin's price appreciation. And I remember this friend of mine, we were having this exact same conversation back in 2017, the last time Bitcoin was just going through the roof in terms of price appreciation. It got all the way up to almost, I think, $20,000 per Bitcoin in a very short period of time. At that point, neither of us owned or had bought any Bitcoin. And then the price shortly after that dropped from about $20,000 per Bitcoin all the way down to $3,000 per Bitcoin. And then I remember when Bitcoin was at about $6,000, right about the time this friend of mine bought it. I think we were out on a hike and he said, yeah, I just bought some of these funds that invest in Bitcoin. And so I thought to myself, well, now's the time. You know, it would make a lot more sense if I was going to buy this thing. If I think it was worth $20,000, now I can buy it for $6,000. That'd be a heck of a lot better deal. But I had the same questions I had then that I do now. And so in today's podcast, I just want to share with you what I've been thinking about when it comes to Bitcoin and why I have personally been unable to purchase any of it for myself. So as I listen, as I read, as I study about Bitcoin, it seems like it's really broken down into three different areas: Bitcoin as a currency, Bitcoin as a commodity or a store of value, or Bitcoin as technology through blockchain. And then as I think about Bitcoin, there are a couple of other things or ideas that come to the surface. Number one are narratives, the stories that we tell ourselves, how we justify value. The second one is the principle of scarcity and how it affects the price of things. The next one is just asking the question, what makes something valuable? The next one is belief. How important is what we believe tied to perceived value? The next one is the word promises, which is really what our current money system is based on. And then, do fundamental valuations matter? That's another thing I've been thinking about. So why does Bitcoin seem so popular today? This is something I ask myself. And kind of what I hear people talking about, the big issue is that people are losing confidence in this fiat money system because of the massive stimulus and printing of money and the quantitative easing that the Federal Reserve has been engaged in, as well as all of the stimulus measures that Congress has been voting on. It's interesting to me to note that while Bitcoin has been on a tear as a store of value in the face of this currency debasement, gold in this year, 2021, is barely doing anything. It's actually lost money, I think, year to date from January 1st until today. And part of the reason I think for this is because all of those gold bugs, all those folks have shifted their attention away from the speculation of gold and into the speculation of Bitcoin. And whether it's gold or Bitcoin, it really is speculation. It's trying to buy something low and planning to sell it high, which, as many of you know, I'm really big into investing, not so much into speculation. I don't go to casinos for fun. In August of 1971 is when the United States left the gold standard. So from the 1800s up till 1971, our dollars were backed by gold. But in 1971, our dollars became a fiat currency backed only by a promise, only by faith that our government, that our Federal Reserve, that our central bankers would do the right things. Milton Friedman said that inflation is a dangerous disease and sometimes a fatal disease for society. The cause of inflation, he says, is a monetary phenomenon. It is a rapid increase in the quantity of money greater than output. Governments control the quantity of money, and so inflation is made by governments, according to Milton Friedman. Inflation eats away at our purchasing power. Dollars we have today will not purchase as much as they will in the future, and this is not by accident, it's by design. Alan Greenspan said about fiat currency in a speech I found from 2002, he said, the value of fiat money can be inferred only from the values of the present and future goods and services it can command. And that, in turn, has largely rested on the quantity of fiat money created relative to demand. He goes on to say this: the early history of the post-Bretton Woods system of generalized fiat money was plagued, as we all remember, by excess money issuance and the resultant inflationary instability. Central bankers' success, however, in containing inflation during the past 2 decades raises hopes that fiat money can be managed in a responsible way. This has been the case in the United States, and the dollar, despite the many challenges to its status, it remains the principal international currency. If the evident recent success of fiat money regimes falters, we may have to go back to seashells or oxen as our medium of exchange. In that unlikely event, I trust that the discount window of the Federal Reserve of New York will have an adequate inventory of oxen. Well, this is where Bitcoin comes into play, right? People are saying, well, instead of going back to seashells and oxen or even gold, Bitcoin is the technology. They call it the currency of the internet. It is what's going to replace currency in the future. At least that's what the prophets and the disciples of Bitcoin say about this asset class. And I use those words prophets and disciples because Bitcoin really has become somewhat of a belief phenomenon. In 2010, a guy walked into a pizza parlor and paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. Today, 1 Bitcoin is valued at over $50,000. So I guess you could say at over $500 million, based on the current price of Bitcoin, I guess you could say those were some really expensive pizzas. So let's talk about some of the basics as I've been studying this. What is a currency? Currency is a medium of exchange. It's money. The question becomes, can Bitcoin be exchanged? And the answer is yes. Does it have value? Apparently it does, because right now it's worth more than $1 trillion. But the topic of the value associated with Bitcoin, I think, is up for debate. What's the criteria for a stable, uniform currency? So in a recent interview, James Bullard, who is the St. Louis Federal Reserve president, recently said the test for a currency is that it needs to provide, number 1, stability about future supply of the currency, and number 2, stable value against goods and other currencies. He said, we already have a dollar that can be traded electronically, and we have currency competition with currencies that are issued by other governments. Another comment he made is that before the Civil War, different banks issued different currencies and they traded at different discounts to one another. And he said that people did not like it. He said you don't want to go to a non-uniform currency where one person pays with Bitcoin, one person pays with Ripple, one person pays with Ethereum, and another person pays with $1. What about this terminology, cryptocurrency? What is cryptography? And cryptography basically is just a mathematical formula for keeping something a secret. The movie The Imitation Game tells the story of a mathematician who deciphered the Enigma encryption device that the Germans used for cryptography during World War II to communicate through Morse code in a secure way. I read that it's been said that deciphering that code from the Enigma transmissions was decisive to Allied victory.